Good afternoon and happy Father's Day to those who are fathers genetically, to those who are adoptive fathers, to those who are serving as a fatherly influence. We are mindful of you today. We honor you. I'm a dad, and so I've been honored today. I've been graced today. My kids and my wife shared with me that I am one in a minion, and so I hope that you have been shown your love and appreciation today for all the hard work that you put in, for all the challenges that you push through. And I wanted to say today, and spend a few times talking to fathers, to those who are also the support staff for fathers. And so whether you're a man or a woman, whether you are young or old, you might be a father, or the support staff of a father. So hopefully we're dealing with everybody in this message. In regards to fathers, we need you, fathers. I am needed, and you are needed, and we certainly need support staff. It's a challenging job to be a father. Some days are very easy, and some days are particularly challenging. I want to share with you an old poem about fatherhood, and then we'll draw some principles from the Word of God that talks about how our one God and Father over all mankind desires for His children to act in support of fathers, and as fathers to be raising up little ones. So the poem says, it's called What Makes a Dad, and it says, God took the strength of a mountain, the majesty of a tree, the warmth of a summer sun, the calm of a quiet sea, the generous soul of nature, the comforting arm of night, the wisdom of the ages, the power of the eagle's flight, the joy of a morning in spring, the faith of a mustard seed, the patience of eternity, the depth of a family need. Then God combined these qualities when there was nothing more to add. He knew His masterpiece was complete, and so He called it Dad. And this is a beautiful poem, and it conveys exactly what God did. God did specifically design us fathers. He designed us with everything that we need to serve the purpose of raising up His little ones. And what greater and more noble calling can there be than to mimic what our Father does for us? We are truly blessed, and we are truly privileged to serve at His behest and to be entrusted with something so precious as a little human soul. And for many of us, more than one, as is the case for me. I have a little daughter and a little son. Hope to have more on the way in the future. I pray that you are remembering your calling and remembering that you have been specifically designed by God, handcrafted, to be the father of your children. The greatest epidemic that we see in the world today is not a disease. It is fatherless homes. Higher crime rates, higher dropout rates, higher abuse rates come from homes that have been compromised by fathers not serving the purpose that they have been called to. Not because they are not designed for that purpose, they are, but because they repudiate that purpose. If we want to change the world, we do it by leading our homes. We do it by leading our children. We do it by leading our wives. And when we can do that, we can effectively change this world. The world will still be destined for destruction, but it will be going towards a better place and a better standing so that we can serve our God more correctly until the time comes where we will be taken up to our Father. Fathers, we have been designed by God. We have been designed by God with a purpose in mind. In fact, the very first father, Adam, was given that specific purpose. One of the first things that God wanted him to do was to become a father himself, to appreciate what it was like to have children, to appreciate perhaps the disobedience of one's children, to develop in patience, to develop in compassion. God designed us fathers, and we are needed. I know we don't always feel needed. I know sometimes we feel taken for granted. Maybe not always, and certainly hopefully not often, but we are needed. We are not needed as a commodity. We are not needed from time to time. Our presence is always needed. Our influence is always needed. And by God's grace, we will serve the purpose that has been called to us. Let me offer a few thoughts today in this video in regards to particularly fathers, but also to those who are supporting fathers and those who are encouraging fathers to take on their God-given role and responsibility and trust with all that they have. So a few thoughts. First of all, be compassionate. Now, this is not always easy for fathers. There are a lot of demands on fathers, particularly nowadays. Work is pulling us in one direction. Our wives are pulling us in another direction. Our kids are pulling us in another direction on top of that. Much of media downplays the importance of fathers, and so we have that constant attack and the constant jokes and pokes and prods. And thankfully, God made us tough, so we can undergo those things and press forward still. But it is hard sometimes to be compassionate. Even so, God is compassionate. He is our God and He is our Father. But He makes that point specifically about fathers, that is expected of them. He says that in Psalm 103. And starting there in verse 8, the Lord is compassionate and gracious. Psalm 103, verse 8. Slow to anger and abounding in loving kindness. He will not always strive with us, nor will He keep His anger forever. He has not dealt with us according to our sins, nor rewarded us according to our iniquities. For as high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is His loving kindness toward those who fear Him. As far as the east is from the west, so far as He removed our transgressions from us. Just as a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear Him. Now, fathers, we are sandwiched here between two positive statements that are made about God. You'll notice towards the beginning of what we read, in verse 8, the Lord is compassionate. And then verse 13, just as a father has compassion on his children. This is given as a rule. And then the Lord has compassion. Again, so the Lord is compassionate. So, fathers, we are sandwiched here between the bread slices that are God and His perfect compassion. And we are stated as needing compassion, that it is a given. And so, fathers, when our children are frustrating, and when our children are just not sharing, and they are fighting constantly, and when they are complaining about the smallest things or the major things, be compassionate. Be compassionate. Understand what is a realistic thing to be upset about. Understand what is a realistic expectation and request from your child. And be compassionate. They are learning and they are growing, and they are deserving of our compassion. The things that they mourn over may not be big in your eyes, but they are certainly big in their eyes. And we cannot force the mold of how we understand things onto them. Rather, we should see them where they are, and we should condescend ourselves to meet them where they are, so that we can lift them up and strengthen them as God has given us that challenge. So be compassionate. It's not easy, but we need to be compassionate. Our Father is compassionate. We need to be compassionate towards our children. And the second thing, be strong. Be strong. I love how Adam is made. He's not made from anything particularly beautiful. He's made from dirt. In fact, that's what Adam means in Hebrew. It means dirt, mud, clay. And fathers, we are made to be strong. After all, we lift our kids up by those biceps constantly. And we have them riding on our shoulders. And we lift them up and we support them. And we go out for walks that don't actually end up being walks. They end up being more like carries. We do that because we're strong. We do that because we've been designed to do that. We are strong. And we've been made that way. So get stronger. Get stronger for your kids. And I don't just mean that physically, although that will benefit you. Be physically strong. Be emotionally strong. Control your anger. Use it righteously. Control your anger. Be strong enough to be emotionally impacted as you extend compassion towards your children. Be strong enough to cry. Be strong in the jokes that you have, making sure that they are pure, but be strong in those jokes. Be strong enough to discipline your child, to understand when they have stepped beyond where they need to be, and to redirect them towards the path that God has called you to ensure they stay upon. We are the shepherds of our families, fathers, and we need to exercise the rod and the staff. And he who spares the rod spoils the child, as the scriptures say. There are sometimes a great compounding of foolishness that builds up in the heart of our children. And we need to drive it far from them. That is hard. It's hard to do that correctly. It's hard not to go overboard. Find that middle ground. Be strong enough to find that middle ground. Be strong enough to ensure that your child knows the difference between foolishness and wisdom, between playing in an understandable and fun way and going too far. Be strong enough to make that distinction. And be spiritually strong. Be spiritually strong, because guess what? As you develop a relationship with your Father in heaven, you influence your child. If your child recognizes that you are only at services to worship the Lord half the time, what do you think is going to happen with them? If they see that you partake of your meals without offering thanks before, what do you think that they will do? If they realize that God is second in your life, where do you think he's going to be in their lives? If they recognize that perhaps when you lead songs or prayers or offer a sermon or an invitation, if they recognize that you're giving a half-hearted effort, what do you think they're going to do in their discipleship? If they realize that you could be stronger spiritually if you wanted to be, imagine the excuses that they will use. Our children are watching us, fathers. And when we fall short, we make it all the easier for them to fall short. So be spiritually strong. This next one is a challenge, especially for all the broken homes in our society. Fathers, love your children's mother. Love your children's mother. In fact, this is so important and so crucial that it is likened to the relationship that is shared between Jesus and the church. In Ephesians chapter 5, starting in verse 22, there are some instructions about wives and husbands, and certainly this has carryover in regards to children as well. But starting in verse 22, Ephesians 5, wives, be subject to your own husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ also is the head of the church, he himself being the Savior of the body. It's a high calling, husbands, to be the head of our wives, to be the head of our families. But as the church is subject to Christ, so also the wives ought to be to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her, so that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, that he might present to himself the church in all her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she would be holy and blameless. Husbands, our actions and our activities sanctify our families, sanctify our wives. Verse 28, so husbands ought also to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his own wife loves himself, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ also does the church, because we are members of his body. Husbands, do you nourish and do you cherish your wife, the mother of your children? Do you nourish that relationship? Are you committed to that relationship? Or are you just the guy who pads the bank account, who shows up once in a while to eat and sleep? God forbid that we would ever fall into that relationship. Nourish and cherish your wife. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, verse 31, and shall be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is great, but I am speaking with reference to Christ and the church. Nevertheless, each individual among you also is to love his own wife, even as himself, and the wife must see to it that she respects her husband. Fathers, love the mother of your children, because if you do not, it will impact them. It will impact them in ways that will last for the rest of their lives. It's almost cliche nowadays to mention that somebody has daddy problems. Why has that become cliche? God has designed us to lead our children. And there are many great fathers out there, and I applaud you for all the actions that you give. Now, we can be better. We can love the mother of our children better. So love the mother of your children. Lay down your life for the mother of your children. Lay down your ambition for the mother of your children. Lay down your preferences for the mother of your children. Make sacrifices for the mother of your children, because insofar as you love your wife, your children will grow, and they will grow in the proper way. Proverbs speaks a great deal about wisdom, and I want to kind of bridge to that idea. Be wise. Be wise. And how often a small child will come to appreciate their parents and the knowledge that their parents have, so much so that they brag about their parents, and they talk about, oh, he knows everything, or she knows everything. My father knows everything. My mom knows everything. Be the source of wisdom for your children. In fact, Proverbs begins that way, like I said. Proverbs chapter 1, verses 7 and following talk about listening. They call for a son to listen to his father's instruction and his mother's instruction, so that they can be an ornament about his neck. Make sure you're on the same page, and make sure you're offering that wisdom that God has given to you to offer to your children. Protect them. Protect them, because this world is a very hateful and hurtful place. It is emotionally hurtful. It is physically hurtful even now. Protect them. Make that sacrifice for your children. You are the shepherd of your family, and there are wolves closing in on your family. Defend them. Defend them with everything that you have. Lay down your life for your children, because that is a high and noble calling that your Father has given. And then one last thing. Teach them about your Father. Teach them about your Father. Not your physical father, although that can be a good thing to teach to your children. Teach them about your Father in heaven. Teach them about our Father in heaven. Teach them about how we are his children, and in him we live and we move and we have our very being. Teach them about his compassion, and teach them about his grace. Teach them about his expectations, and guide your expectations to conform to his expectations. Teach them about how much you love your Father in heaven. Teach them about how you desire mercy from your Father in heaven. Teach them about how you don't take him for granted. And teach them about how he is your number one priority. Because if you do that, you lay down a path for them to walk upon that will keep them safe. Safer than you could ever effectively do otherwise. So fathers, happy Father's Day. We need you. This world is short on good fathers. But the good fathers who are out there, we appreciate you. We honor you because you are fully deserving. We realize that God has designed you. He has designed you to be an influence to us. And we recognize that there are many people who are support staff for our good fathers. And we appreciate you too. We appreciate you good wives who respect and submit to your husbands. They make it easy for your husbands, easier at the very least. And children, we appreciate you. We often say things that are cliche, things like you are the next generation, you are the future. We put a lot of stock in you. We realize that you will fall, but our strong daddy's arms will be there to catch you. We love you and we appreciate you. Help us to be good fathers. Call us out lovingly and respectfully when we fall short, and we will do our best to do better. Thank you for listening to this message. We have a Father in heaven who loves us very much, and we should always serve to imitate his example. We appreciate you and we love you. If we can be a good influence upon you, if we can pray for you to be a better father or better support for the fathers in your lives, then we would love to do that. Please reach out to us. Have a good night.